Birthdays were supposed to feel warm, like stepping into a room lit by soft candles and love. Mine felt like stepping into a freezer. I turned 25 that morning, already exhausted from a week of overtime, but hopeful my parents' annual birthday dinner would at least give me a small moment of joy. For years, even when money was tight, they insisted on paying the bill as a tradition. This year, the restaurant felt different. The tone, the glances, the tension under my mother's smile. My father kept checking his phone. My younger brother, Ethan, sat there smirking like he knew something I didn't. I ignored it. I wanted peace. We ordered food I normally wouldn't touch because it was expensive. Steak, seafood, appetizers I could barely pronounce. I assumed, foolishly, that tradition still stood. The night stayed stiff until the waiter placed the bill on the table. My father didn't reach for it. My mother didn't even look at it. Instead, she slid it toward me and said calmly, as if she hadn't just detonated a bomb in my chest, "Since you're an adult now, you can pay your own bill." Ethan laughed. Finally. Birthday warmth evaporated. A cold, steady anger took its place. They had no idea what they just started. For a moment, I stared at the bill as if it were written in a foreign language. My mind couldn't catch up. My parents had never done this, not once in 25 years. Even during the years when my dad was unemployed, they insisted birthdays were sacred. I lifted my eyes slowly. Is this a joke? My mother folded her arms. You're not a child. It's time you start pulling your weight. My weight? I repeated, stunned. Ethan snorted again. My father finally spoke, voice clipped. We've supported you long enough. You chose a useless degree. You chose a low-paying job. You put yourself in this position. I worked 2 jobs. They knew that. They also knew I'd been saving every possible cent to move out. So this is what, a lesson? I asked. Exactly, my mother said. You need to learn financial responsibility. The irony almost made me laugh. Financial responsibility? From the same parents who bounced checks and maxed credit cards? But I swallowed the fury climbing up my throat. I paid my portion of the bill. It hurt. My checking account winced. Happy birthday, Ethan said, grinning. I didn't respond, because at that moment, a thought, sharp, dark, satisfying, slid into my mind. If they wanted me to be responsible, then yes, I would pay bills. Just not mine. Theirs. And not the way they expected. The ride home was silent. My parents didn't ask if I wanted cake, didn't mention gifts, didn't even bother pretending the night had been normal. My mother scrolled through her phone, my father hummed to the radio. Ethan sent voice notes to his friends, probably mocking me. I stared out the window, but my mind was running harder than the car engine. For years, my parents treated money like a weapon, threatening to cut me off, using it to control decisions, dangling help only to replace it with guilt. I tolerated it because I believed family meant giving grace. But tonight wasn't about grace. It was about humiliation. And humiliation demands balance. When we got home, my mother called out, "Don't forget to transfer us for your part of the tip." I inhaled slowly. Sure. She nodded proudly, as if she had accomplished excellent parenting. I went to my room, closed the door, and opened my laptop. I pulled up one particular folder, the one I had been building quietly for 3 years. Screenshots, emails, contracts, bank statements, records of the debts they'd begged me to help with, the money I'd lent them without interest, the bills I'd paid just for now. They owed me thousands. Tonight showed they had no intention of paying it back. So I would collect, legally, fully, and with interest. A week before my birthday, I had received an email from my landlord. The rent for the downstairs unit had gone unpaid again. Not by me, by my parents. They had convinced the landlord to let me be listed as their emergency guarantor because their credit score had tanked. I had agreed, trying to be the good child, even though I knew I was being manipulated. Now, as I scrolled through my files, I found every message proving it, every promise, every excuse, every guilt trip. If their rent remained unpaid, the landlord legally had the right to pursue the guarantor, meaning me. But there was something they didn't know. 2 days before my birthday, I had already emailed a lawyer, a real estate attorney, a quiet consultation, a just in case. And he gave me one beautiful piece of information. If the primary renters violated the lease and the guarantor wanted out, they could request immediate removal under certain clauses, which meant I could pull myself off their lease and the landlord could evict them within 30 days without me owing a cent. They wanted to teach me responsibility? Fine. I would take responsibility for my financial future, not their mistakes. And I would send them the bill. Every last one. The next morning, I went downstairs to find my parents arguing in the kitchen. My father looked stressed. My mother looked furious. Ethan sat at the counter eating cereal, pretending not to enjoy the chaos. "What happened?" I asked casually. My mother sighed dramatically. "The electricity bill doubled. Your father forgot to pay last month, and now they want late fees." My father snapped, "Maybe if everyone in this house didn't use power like it's free." There it was again. Money. Blame. Deflection. I poured myself coffee. "How much is it?" "Why?" My mother frowned. "Because," I said calmly, "it's your bill, remember?" The silence was sharp. Ethan choked on his cereal. My father slammed a drawer. "Don't disrespect your mother." I didn't even blink. I'm just being responsible. My mother stiffened. She didn't like being reminded of her own words. I walked upstairs with my coffee, their voices echoing behind me. As soon as I reached my room, I opened the attorney's email, drafted a follow-up, and hit send. Today, the process would officially begin. By the time it ended, their bills would no longer be my problem. But the consequences of their choices? Those would be theirs to pay, with interest. By midday, my phone buzzed with a reply from the attorney. Short, precise, perfect. "Your request is valid. I will file the guarantor removal form today. The landlord will be notified within 24 hours. I exhaled slowly, the first real breath I'd taken since my birthday dinner. This wasn't revenge yet. It was simply step one, protecting myself, drawing boundaries they never respected. But downstairs, the storm brewed louder. My mother knocked on my door without waiting for permission and walked in. "We need you to transfer money for the electricity bill." I turned in my chair. "No." She blinked, as if I'd spoken in alien code. "No. What do you mean, no?" "You said I should be responsible for myself, so I am. I'm taking care of my bills, not yours." Her jaw tightened. "We raised you. We've sacrificed." I cut her off. "And I helped you. I lent you money. I covered rent. I took on debts you promised to repay." She frowned sharply. "We've been under pressure. You're being dramatic." That word, dramatic, always made my skin crawl. The easiest way they dismissed my pain. "Mom," I said quietly, "I'm done funding this house." She stared at me with a mix of offense and disbelief. And then she said the sentence that sealed her fate. "Fine, but don't expect us to help you with anything ever again." She didn't realize it yet, but she had nothing left I needed. The following morning, my parents were unusually quiet, too quiet. Ethan watched me like a hawk, as if waiting for something to snap. He thrived on drama, especially when it wasn't his. When I passed the kitchen, my father spoke without looking at me. "We saw your laptop open last night. Why were you emailing a lawyer?" My blood chilled. "You went through my things?" "We have a right to know if you're planning something stupid," he snapped. "You live under our roof." I folded my arms. "And you use my financial information without permission. So, if we're talking about overstepping..." He didn't like that. My mother crossed her arms. "What were you doing with a lawyer?" I kept my tone even, safeguarding myself. "From what?" Ethan snickered under his breath. "From being held responsible for bills that aren't mine." Their faces shifted. Confusion, then irritation, then the subtle flicker of fear. My father scoffed. "Removing yourself from the lease won't work. The landlord knows us." I shrugged. "He knows laws, too." My mother stepped forward. "You're being ungrateful." There it was again, the classic weapon. "Actually," I said quietly, "I'm being responsible." They stared, stunned. They didn't know the landlord had already received the paperwork. They didn't know eviction warnings would follow. And they definitely didn't know what waited next. But they would. Soon. That evening, I got a call from Mr. Halverson, the landlord. His voice was polite, but the tension was clear beneath it. "I received a request from your attorney. Just confirming, you want to be removed as guarantor?" "Yes," I said steadily. He sighed. "I suspected something like this would happen. Your parents are difficult with payments. But since you qualify for the removal conditions, I'll proceed." I expected relief. Instead, I felt something heavier. The slow, sinking realization that the people who were supposed to protect me had done nothing but pull me under with them. "Thank you," I whispered. "I'll issue the notice tomorrow. They'll have 30 days. 30 days. I hung up, heart pounding. Not from guilt, from adrenaline, from the weight of reclaiming my life, from knowing my parents were about to face something they'd never imagined I had the courage to initiate. Downstairs, laughter erupted. Ethan, likely watching videos. My parents arguing faintly about unexpected expenses. They had no idea the largest one was hours away. Later, as I tried to sleep, my mind replayed every night I'd transferred money I couldn't spare, every guilt trip, every lecture about responsibility, every sacrifice they demanded and never acknowledged. This wasn't revenge. Not yet. This was justice, beginning to stretch its legs. The eviction notice arrived at noon. I heard the knock from my room, firm, official, echoing through the walls. I didn't move. I waited. My father answered. Silence. Then the sharp sound of paper crumpling under a tightening fist. "What the hell is this?" he roared. I walked downstairs calmly. My mother was pale. Ethan's smirk evaporated. "You did this?" he demanded, waving the notice. "I protected myself," I corrected. "You're kicking us out of our home." "No," I said. "Your unpaid rent and broken lease terms kicked you out." My mother's voice cracked. "How could you do this to your own family?" My hands trembled, but my voice didn't. "How could you put me on a lease you had no intention of honoring? How could you threaten my credit, my savings, my future? You did this." "You ungrateful child," he spat. I learned from the best. The silence that followed was suffocating. My mother stepped forward, desperation breaking through her anger. "Please, talk to the landlord. Undo this. We raised you." "You used me," I corrected. "I'm done." My father pointed at me with rage-filled certainty. "If you walk away from us..." I met his glare with something he never expected: indifference. I already did. The next few days were a war zone. My parents alternated between anger, guilt, manipulation, and emotional theaters. Ethan kept asking what my problem was, as if I were the unreasonable one. But I kept my distance. Instead, I worked, saved, prepared. On the fourth day, I printed every record of money I'd lent them, every bank transfer, every payment I covered, every agreement they'd signed or verbally confirmed over messages. The total was obscene, $12,480. Almost 2 years of scraping by just to keep them afloat. I placed the folder on the dining table. My parents froze when they saw it. "What's this?" my mother asked, her voice thin. "A bill," I said. "Itemized. Everything you owe me." My father's face reddened. "This is ridiculous." "No," I said calmly. "This is responsibility. You taught me that, remember?" He opened the folder and scanned the pages. The color drained from his face. "You expect us to pay this?" "Yes," I said, "in full." My mother shook her head. "We don't have this kind of money." "I know," I said, "which is why I've already taken the next step." They looked up sharply. "What step?" my father demanded. I took a breath. "The legal one." My parents stared at me as if I'd announced their execution. Maybe, in a way, I had. My father's jaw twitched. "What do you mean, the legal one?" I sat down, folding my hands calmly on the table. I consulted an attorney. He reviewed the proof of debts, the messages, the transfers, the agreements. He confirmed I have the right to pursue repayment formally. My mother's voice trembled. You're taking your own parents to court?" "I'm filing a claim," I corrected. "Small claims court. It's not criminal. It's just holding you accountable for money you promised to pay back." My father slammed the folder shut. "We're your parents. Parents borrow from their children all the time." "And responsible parents pay it back," I said. "Or at least don't punish their kid for helping them." My mother clasped her hands together tightly. "We'll work it out. We'll make payments when we can." "You've said that for 3 years. This time we mean it." I shook my head. "I gave you chances. I gave you time. You used both and respected neither." My father leaned forward, voice low and dangerous. "You're doing this out of spite." "No," I said quietly. "I'm doing it because you taught me, on my birthday, that I'm on my own now. And I intended to act like it." The eviction deadline crept closer. Boxes began stacking in the living room, though my parents refused to admit they were preparing to leave. Every slammed drawer echoed their resentment. Ethan avoided me completely now. To him, I wasn't a sibling anymore. I was the villain who broke the family's financial chain, the role they'd assigned me since adolescence. But for the first time in my life, I felt free. A week before the final move-out date, I received another email from the attorney confirming the court filing date. As I read it, my mother appeared in my doorway, eyes red, lips tight. "Can we talk?" I nodded, even though emotional conversations with her always ended the same way, with me apologizing for pain I didn't cause. She sat on the edge of my bed. "You're really going through with this?" "Yes." She wiped her eyes. "We've hit a rough patch, you know that. Things haven't been easy." "I know," I said gently, "which is why I helped. But you turned my birthday into a lecture about responsibility while drowning me with yours." She inhaled shakingly. "We're your family." "I didn't stop being family," I said. "You did, when you stopped treating me like one." Her tears slowed. She looked at her hands. "Your father will never forgive you." I nodded. "I'm prepared for that." But the truth? It still hurt. Move-out day arrived like a storm. Loud, messy, inevitable. The landlord stood outside with a clipboard, while my father shouted about unfair treatment and loyal tenants. My mother cried softly as movers carried boxes through the door. Ethan sulked near the driveway, glaring at me every few minutes. I stayed on the porch, arms crossed, observing everything with a strange blend of sadness and clarity. I didn't want them homeless. I didn't want them suffering. I just wanted them to stop taking advantage of me. When the last box was loaded, the landlord handed my parents the final paperwork. You have 30 hours to remove the remaining items. After that, the locks change. My father rounded on me, eyes blazing. I hope you're proud. You destroyed this family. I met his fury with steady calm. No, I said, I stopped letting you destroy me. His face twitched. You owed us loyalty. I owed you love, I said. I gave that. You owed me respect. You didn't. He scoffed and walked away, muttering under his breath. My mother avoided my eyes. Ethan spat on the ground near my feet. As the moving truck pulled away, a wave of silence washed over me. For the first time in years, the house felt breathable. But the story wasn't over, not even close. The legal chapter hadn't begun yet. The next 2 weeks were strangely quiet. I still lived in the same house. The landlord allowed me to remain since I had a stable income and no lease violations. The peace felt foreign, like wearing someone else's clothes. But quiet never lasts. 3 days before the court date, I received a long, furious voice note from my father. You ungrateful brat. Your mother is sick over this. Ethan can't sleep. We're staying with friends because of you. If you think some judge will force us to pay imaginary debts, you're delusional. Drop the case before you embarrass yourself. I listened twice, not to absorb the words, but to feel the emotional manipulation I had grown up with, now exposed in daylight. My hands didn't shake like they used to. I didn't cry. I didn't doubt myself. Instead, I forwarded the audio to my attorney. His reply came minutes later. This helps your case. Thank you. The truth was undeniable. They had borrowed money. I had proof. They avoided repayment. I had evidence. The case wasn't about revenge. It was about boundaries and consequences. The night before the hearing, my mother called. Her voice was small. Please don't do this. I hesitated. Then pay some of it. Anything. She was silent. And in that silence, I found my answer. Court day arrived with gray skies and heavy air, the kind that made everything feel slower, heavier, more dramatic. I sat in the hallway, folder in hand, heart steady despite the world around me. I wasn't here out of anger. I was here because I deserved closure. My parents arrived late, flustered and irritated. My father refused to look at me. My mother gave a half-hearted, guilt-soaked smile. Ethan didn't come. Of course he didn't. When our case was called, we stood before the judge. The room was small, but felt enormous. My father began with theatrics. Your Honor, we're a family. This is a misunderstanding. The judge raised a hand. You'll have your turn. Let's start with the evidence. I opened my folder calmly and handed the bailiff. Bank transfers, messages confirming agreements, dates, amounts, even handwritten notes from my parents promising repayment soon. The judge read quietly, then looked at my parents. These debts seem clearly documented. Do you dispute owing this money? My father stuttered. We supported them their whole life. This is disrespectful. That is not the question, the judge said evenly. Do you dispute the debt? Silence. My mother whispered, no. For the first time, truth finally outweighed manipulation. The judge nodded. Then my ruling is simple. My pulse hammered. My parents braced. The plaintiff wins. The words echoed through the courtroom like a hammer. The plaintiff wins. My parents' faces drained of color. My father's hand shook as he gripped the edge of the table. My mother's eyes welled up, but there was no relief there, only shame. "Your Honor," my father stammered, "this is extreme. My child, my own flesh and blood." "Debt is debt," the judge replied evenly. "You have 30 days to pay the plaintiff in full. Interest and legal fees are included. Failure to do so may result in wage garnishment or other legal enforcement." My heart thudded. Relief, satisfaction, and the tiniest sting of sadness mingled. I had not wanted this to hurt them. I had wanted justice. They had spent decades teaching me responsibility through guilt and manipulation. I had simply followed the rules, the legal ones. As we exited the courtroom, my father remained silent. My mother whispered, "We'll figure something out." I looked at them calmly. It's time you learned what it means to be accountable. Ethan texted me later. "Congrats, I guess. Mom is crying, Dad is furious." I smiled at my phone. That was all I needed. Justice, once abstract, now had a name. Mine. Back home, the atmosphere shifted instantly. The eviction notice and the court judgment created a pressure they couldn't ignore. Boxes that had been stacked haphazardly now became a visible countdown. My parents scurried to organize finances, scribbling on napkins, pulling receipts, murmuring apologies to me in private. I observed quietly, sipping coffee. No lectures, no manipulations, just them facing consequences. Ethan attempted small jabs. "You really did this? You're evil." I shrugged. "I just did what had to be done. You'll understand someday." My mother eventually approached me. We never thought you'd actually enforce it." "Maybe that's the point," I said. "Sometimes lessons need more than words." She nodded slowly, tears running down her cheeks. "We treated you like a child forever. We never imagined you'd take control of your life." I didn't reply. Words weren't necessary. Actions had spoken louder than any lecture could. That night, for the first time in years, I slept peacefully. No guilt, no manipulation, just clarity. The scales had shifted. I had fought the silent wars of my upbringing and won. 2 weeks later, the first payment arrived. My mother called, voice trembling. "We managed to gather part of the amount. We'll continue to pay, we promise." I noted it calmly. "Good, that's accountability." She paused. I didn't realize how much you had sacrificed for us. I'm sorry." I smiled softly. It's never about apologies. It's about learning the boundaries. The satisfaction I felt wasn't malicious. It was the relief of finally reclaiming my space, my money, my dignity. Ethan finally confronted me too. "You really can't be swayed, huh?" "No," I said simply. "I've learned. I won't be manipulated again." Even my father, in his quietest moment, muttered a grudging acknowledgement. "You've grown up, faster than I expected." I had waited decades for this recognition. I didn't mock him. I didn't gloat. I simply nodded. Sometimes winning isn't about yelling or forcing someone to admit they're wrong. It's about showing that you will no longer accept what hurts you. And now, they knew. The world hadn't shifted, only the balance in our small, broken family. By the end of the month, the payments were fully caught up. My parents had scraped, borrowed from friends, and finally faced the truth they had avoided for years. I was no longer their financial safety net. The transformation in the household was palpable, tension replaced by cautious respect. My mother even offered a tentative smile as I passed in the hallway. Ethan tried to slip back into his usual teasing, but quickly realized I wouldn't respond. The old dynamics, manipulation, guilt, passive aggression, no longer worked. One evening, while they were packing the last items for the final move, my mother spoke quietly. We underestimated you." "You did," I admitted. "I've learned from your mistakes." Her silence said more than words ever could. In my room, I reflected on the journey. From humiliation at a birthday dinner to legal victory and restored dignity, the path had been painful, but the lesson was clear. Standing up for yourself is never betrayal. It's survival. The empowerment I felt was intoxicating. It was my money, my boundaries, my life, and finally, mine alone. The day my parents moved out, the house was quiet. Empty rooms echoed with memory. Birthday dinners, arguments, laughter, tears. I walked through each space slowly, absorbing the calm that replaced chaos. I didn't gloat, I didn't celebrate with fanfare, but inside, a quiet triumph hummed. Ethan lingered near the door, hesitant. "I guess you really meant it. You weren't bluffing." "No," I said simply. "I've learned. No one controls me anymore." My father's final glance back at the house was heavy with defeat. My mother's eyes were downcast. I felt no joy in their discomfort, only a sense of balance restored. For decades, I had absorbed their manipulation, their judgment, their financial games. Now, the scales had shifted, and for the first time, I could breathe freely in the place I had called home all my life. I sat at the kitchen table, once a battlefield, and sipped my coffee. This was not just victory. This was liberation. And the lesson was clear. Respect, responsibility, and boundaries aren't gifts. They're earned. Weeks passed, and the house settled into a new rhythm. Silence was no longer oppressive, it was restorative. I filled the spaces with music, books, and the small joys I ignored while mediating chaos. Then one evening, the mail arrived, a letter from my attorney. Curious, I opened it carefully. It was from my parents. Inside, a neatly written note. "We want to acknowledge what you did. We were wrong to put you in that position. We will continue to repay everything we owe and hope one day to earn back your trust. We are proud of your courage, even if it came at a cost to us." I paused, reading the words twice. My heart didn't swell with triumph, it softened. They had finally recognized responsibility. I placed the note on my desk, a quiet reminder of how far we had come. Ethan peeked over my shoulder. "They actually said something nice?" I smiled. "Yes, it's rare, but it counts." The boundaries I had fought to enforce didn't just protect my finances. They reshaped the way my family would interact with me from now on. Respect, once demanded, had finally been earned. And for the first time, I felt a deep, unshakable peace. One morning, as I prepared breakfast, my phone buzzed with a text from an unfamiliar number. Curious, I opened it. "Hi, I'm the landlord. I wanted to thank you. After your actions, my tenants have finally started respecting their financial obligations. It's rare to see someone take accountability the right way. Kudos." I laughed softly, sipping coffee. Even outside my family, my resolve had ripple effects. That day, Ethan walked into my room hesitantly. I think I understand now. You weren't cruel. You were smart. You were responsible. You just did what we should have done." "I know." "Exactly. Responsibility isn't about punishment. It's about boundaries." He looked at me thoughtfully. "I guess I have a lot to learn." "You always do," I teased lightly. But I wasn't angry. I had patience now,
and the strength to let people learn at their own pace. The sunlight streaming through my window illuminated the room in a way I hadn't noticed before. Warm, calm, and welcoming. A perfect reflection of my life, no longer controlled by guilt or manipulation. The storm of my birthday humiliation had passed, and I had emerged stronger. Months later, I received an unexpected visit. My parents stood at the doorway,
a small gift in hand. My mother looked nervous. We wanted to apologize again, not just for the money, but for everything before that. I gestured for them to come in. You've apologized enough. Actions matter more than words. They handed me a small box. Inside, a delicate framed photo of our family from years ago, a happier moment before money and control poisoned the dynamics. My father sighed. We lost perspective. We see that now. I smiled faintly. Then perhaps we can rebuild, slowly, respectfully, without repeating the past. They nodded, relief and tentative hope mingling on their faces. Ethan lingered behind them, smirking slightly. You've set a high bar, sis. I know, I said, and I won't lower it for anyone. That day, I realized something profound. Revenge wasn't the goal. Justice wasn't the goal. The goal was clarity, boundaries, and reclaiming what was mine, emotionally and financially. And now, the first real step toward a healthier family had begun. The next birthday came, but this time the atmosphere was different. I prepared my own dinner at home, small and elegant, enjoying a quiet celebration. No lectures, no debt reminders, no guilt. Just me, my thoughts, and a sense of triumph tempered by peace. A knock came at the door, my parents. They brought a modest cake and a handwritten card. "Happy birthday," my mother said softly. I smiled genuinely. "Thank you, it means a lot." No lectures, no expectations, no financial strings, just acknowledgement. My father offered a shy smile. "We're proud of the person you've become." Ethan rolled his eyes but smiled too. "Guess I can't top that." As we shared the small celebration, I reflected on everything, from humiliation at dinner to legal victories, financial empowerment, and emotional boundaries. I had grown more in a year than I had in a decade. The most important lesson wasn't the money. It wasn't even the eviction. It was learning to value myself even when those closest to me failed to. And for the first time, I celebrated not just a birthday, but my independence. As night fell, I stood by the window, looking out at the quiet street. The chaos of the past year felt distant now, like a storm that had passed, but left fertile ground for growth. I thought about my parents, my brother, and myself. Lessons had been learned, some harsh, some gentle. I had proven my worth, my responsibility, and my boundaries. No longer would I tolerate manipulation or disrespect. No longer would I let guilt dictate my choices. I smiled. Life wasn't perfect. The family was still flawed. But the power dynamic had shifted. I was no longer the powerless child, forced to carry debts, embarrassment, and emotional manipulation. The house was mine, the boundaries were mine, and my sense of self was finally mine. And as I blew out a single candle on a small cake I had bought for myself, I whispered quietly, "I am responsible for me. I am free, and I am enough." For the first time, justice, responsibility, and peace coexisted perfectly in my life. The birthday that had once been a humiliation had transformed into the ultimate victory, a celebration of self-worth, empowerment, and the life I had fought to claim.